Afghanistan has held its second parliamentary election since the fall of the Taliban in 2001, and it was a day of threats, intimidation and allegations of widespread fraud. But Afghan President Hamid Karzai described it as a step towards a brighter future. The top U.S. commander in Afghanistan, General Davis, echoed, saying the vote sends a powerful message that the future of the country belongs to the people. But the state of the country's security did have an impact. The country's Interior Ministry says the Taliban carried out 33 bomb attacks on election day, killing 11 civilians and 3 police officers. In last year's presidential election, 42 people were killed. Figures from the Independent Electoral Commission indicate roughly 1 in 3 polling stations were closed. More than 1,000 were shut on Friday, and there are reports many more were unable to open. 11.4 million Afghans were eligible to vote in this year's election. Counting is still underway, but turnout was low. So far, electoral officials say only 3.6 million votes were cast. Al-Jazeera's Sue Turton reports from Kabul.
This is the village of Kankarak, 30 kilometres from Jalalabad, where the Taliban's intimidation tactics stopped a whole village from casting their vote. Similar threats and violent attacks meant just 3.5 million people took part in these parliamentary elections.
3 days ago, the Taliban sent threatening letters telling people not to go to the polling centres and to stay at home.
If I go and vote, what will I do if they cut off my fingers, my nose and ears?
It's all because of the government that the Taliban came and we couldn't use our voting cards. They wasted 5,000 votes from this village. It's because the government is so weak.
The violence was mainly rocket attacks. This on a US military base in Kandahar, where the Taliban scored a direct hit on an ammunition store. But one monitoring group said polling centres were also blown up in Kandahar and in Kunar and Khost province. Just south of Kabul, 8 more rockets shook the city of Ghazni. The Taliban had blocked the main highway from the capital into the province, stopping cars and warning people not to vote. There were over 300 incidents across the country, but the casualty tally remained much lower than last year, just 11 civilians and 3 police officers. 42 people died last year. Election officials said they'd intercepted over 25,000 fake voting cards. Afghan intelligence released these pictures today. These men were arrested in Ghazni and Kabul for possessing thousands of cards that the men said were printed in Pakistan. A mission here in Kabul. He put his inky finger in a bottle of bleach to show how indelible it was.
This is the strongest ink that exists at the moment. In fact, I've done it twice. And it is almost poisonous after twice because it's 25% of silver nitrate. So I would say certainly it's possible to do it, but very difficult.
But Afghan voters were not having such trouble. This ink was the election authorities' fail-safe to prevent people with fake cards voting again and again. After seeing these pictures, Afghans might just be wondering who has voted in this election and how many times. Sue Turton, Al Jazeera, Kabul.
Earlier, I spoke to Ashraf Haidari. He's the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Afghan Embassy in Washington, D.C. I began by asking if the low turnout raised questions about the legitimacy of the election.
In fact, it's not low, given the circumstances in Afghanistan. It has been already pronounced success. The fact that Afghan people braved many threats and attacks by the Taliban, 150 that they launched, rockets and bombs, they still turned out to vote across Afghanistan, including in south and eastern areas where a lot of people were intimidated and threatened not to turn out and cast their vote for their favorite candidate.
You said just a few moments ago that this election has been deemed successful. Who deemed it successful?
Afghans and observers on the ground, and as well as the international community with experience.
Because we have heard responses from the United States, from the European Union, from ISAF, from General David Petraeus, they have applauded the fact that Afghans actually went out to vote, those
Yes.
who did, in the face of these threats and intimidation. But they didn't go to the extent of saying that this has been a success.
Well, with a caution, and that remains to be seen until preliminary results are counted and then complaints and irregularities are addressed from early October until the end of October. So we'll know to the extent that there were fraudulent votes and that must be addressed, and the process must be legitimized once these processes are finalized by the end of October.
The fact that certain polling stations didn't open, isn't that a very poor reflection on a government that it cannot even secure an election for the people of the country?
Well, security of Afghanistan from the very beginning has been a shared responsibility of both the Afghan government and the international community, for the international community to help build the Afghan national security institutions, the Afghan National Army and the police. And to the extent that they have helped equip us and resourced us and enabled us in terms of training to secure the past 3 elections, including this elections, we've done our best. For example, we fielded 300,000 national security forces, police and the army, including 150,000 NATO forces to provide security for this elections.
I'm wondering if you have done your best. This election, it would seem, is going to be less transparent than the previous one, and that was clouded with a great deal of uncertainty, with accusations of widespread fraud. Here, there is even less apparatus to investigate fraud where there are complaints. In many areas, investigators can't get there because of security concerns. And the Complaints Commission has members that were appointed by President Karzai. He actually removed members.
No, that's wrong. In fact, there are members from the international community. The Elections Complaints Commission is a true Afghan and the donor community partnership. There are 3 Afghans appointed by the president and 2 independent
Why did the president remove those who were there already?
Sorry?
Why did the president remove those who were there already? It wasn't acceptable to him, the previous commissioners.
Well, the government of Afghanistan is a sovereign government, and we determined that they needed to be replaced, and they were replaced. And the commission consists of 2 independent leading elections experts, one, I believe, from Iraq and one from South Africa, I believe. And so it is a true partnership, and the commission has already identified a number of issues that they will look at in the weeks, days and weeks to come.
You know, this election was beset by a great many problems, logistical problems, lack of security at polling stations, attacked by Taliban fighters, also threats by Taliban fighters. Tell us why this election is so important for Afghanistan.
Well, it's important because of the ongoing continuing process of deepening democracy in Afghanistan. Remember, in 2001, the Taliban were toppled, and the people of Afghanistan overwhelmingly welcomed and embraced the process of building a democratic government in Afghanistan to ensure their human rights on the long run. So this has been very much participatory. That's why so many Afghans, including women, braved the risks and came out to vote to ensure that their rights will not be violated, that the Taliban will not come back, and that Afghanistan will basically continue to progress democratically and develop with the rest of the region and the world.
The United States has praised the Afghan electorate in a statement released by the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. It said the results and quality of the election will not be immediately evident, and the United States will support the Afghan independent electoral institutions as they do their work in the coming weeks, including carrying out thorough measures to detect and adjudicate